You're listening to another episode of the Just Go Bike podcast. That's AKA Murph.
And that's AP. And this is the podcast where we talk about cycling just for the fun of it, with tales from all over the nation. Come for the bikes, stay for the fun, and leave with a smile.
Well, hello, Murph.
Hey, AP.
Back a couple weeks ago, now it's hard to remember things past the Ragbri route announcement, but do you remember in mid-January we went to Fort Collins and announced the Ride the Rockies route?
Of course. I thought Fort Collins was so cool, and being a part of Ride the Rockies was equally as cool.
Yes, it was completely epic. The New Belgium Brewery where we had the event was the perfect place for the gathering. And they're a ride sponsored this year along with Flex Central and Primal. So it was cool to have all three together.
Oh, for sure, yeah. In this whole episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Ride the Rockies. I'm sure people have heard of it before. We've had many podcasts about Ride the Rockies. But
yeah,
should we talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, Ride the Rockies is one of the events that we work on. I love working for Ride the Rockies. It's such a privilege. It's just as cool as working on Ragbri, and it's something, this is only our second year, so we're just still jumping into the pool on this one, and it's just so much fun because it's so different than what I had ever done in the past. It's a 6-day bike tour in Colorado, but it's in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
So the route and the views are just spectacular. And it does have a similar vibe to Ragbri, but it has obviously way more elevation. It has the mountains, and you really need to train for this one.
Right.
Yeah.
I was lucky to go out and drive the route for social media last year, and I even got to ride a few days, and that elevation is no joke.
I know. Yeah, for us flatlanders,
Yeah.
we always have to get up there an extra day to just sort of get used to the elevation, but
Right.
totally doable, a huge blast. If you're interested, the ride this year takes place from June 11th through 16th. So a nice early summer ride. It both starts and ends in Fort Collins near the New Belgium Brewery. So it makes transportation super easy.
Yeah. So the route is different each year, kind of like Ragbri. And this year, riders get to go through Rocky Mountain National Park, like through the park, which I think is a really unique opportunity because everyone was super pumped about it.
Yeah. And for those of you who aren't from Colorado or don't know a lot about Colorado, and maybe Sabra will talk about this a little bit in the interview, but it's difficult to get access to the Rocky Mountain National Park as a bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot of hard work to pull this off, so it's going to be a really special year this year.
And even more special because you and I get to go and help out this year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we'll be doing social media again and helping out Sabra Nagel, who is the new ride director.
Yes, and by the way, Sabra is our interview today. Woohoo!
Yay!
So she joins the team as ride director and comes with many years of organized bike events. She's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so she lives in Colorado. She knows Colorado like the back of her hand, and she is just so fun to get to know. I can't wait for you all to get to know her like we've been able to get to know her over the last couple weeks because she's so awesome, and she's going to be perfect as the Ride the Rockies tour director. And she's from Iowa.
Yeah, that's right. She's from Glenwood.
Yeah.
But she's lived in Colorado for a long time, so she's a pro there. So, okay, well, let's listen to Sabra and more about Ride the Rockies. All right, I would like to welcome Sabra Nagel to the podcast. Hey, Sabra.
Hi, Murph. How are you?
I'm good. I have had the great opportunity to meet Sabra, and gosh, I've seen you several times in the last couple weeks, even though we live in different states.
Yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind with all these events that have been announced in the last 3 weeks. It's been awesome.
Yeah, and AP and I were just talking about this episode and about Ride the Rockies specifically, and I'll tell you some of the great things we said about Ride the Rockies, but first I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that you are the new Ride the Rockies ride director.
That's true. Yes, I came on board on January 13th, so it was pretty much right into it, which is great. I like to be keeping busy.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
And like Andrea and I were saying in our intro, we got to come to the Ride the Rockies route announcement party. So we got to meet you in person and just see the energy. Because it's very similar to Ragbri in that every year the route is a little bit different. And it's Colorado. Like, maybe you don't get as excited about mountains anymore, but oh my gosh, I absolutely loved being part of this event last year.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, Murph, when because I'm from Iowa, I grew up in Iowa, so I spent a lot of time in Colorado as a kid. And whenever I go back to Glenwood, where I grew up to see my parents, as I'm driving down 76 and heading towards the mountains, when the Front Range finally comes into view, I still get a thrill.
Do
You
you?
know, it
Yeah.
just, yeah, I do. And even every time I go out, say 470, couple 3 miles and look up and see the Front Range, because I actually live sort of in the mountains, so I don't get to see those white peaks unless I drive east and then come back west, and
Ah.
it's always quite a thrill.
So since we kind of alluded to it, tell the listeners where you do live and kind of maybe what I think you're way up remote, but is there cycling culture there?
Yeah, so I live outside of Littleton, up in what we call the Front Range or the foothills of the Front Range, and the cycling culture is huge, and it's huge year round. I mean, I drove out yesterday on an errand, and it was 23 degrees, and I passed 5 cyclists
Oh,
headed up
wow.
the road that I live on.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much a year round thing out here, and the only time you don't see bikes on the road are when it's right after a fresh snow and there's just too much sand and gravel still down.
And they're probably all skiing.
That too, yeah.
Well, as you know, the Just Go Bike podcast is primarily, about Ragbri. So you did say that you're from Iowa, so we should probably give a shout out to your roots, right? Glenwood,
Y-
Iowa?
Yeah, Glenwood, Iowa. Yeah, I've had many generations of my family farmed around Glenwood, Iowa, and my parents still live out there. So I get back quite frequently to see them.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it was a great treat to be out at the Ragbri announcement party last weekend. It really made me homesick. It was just great seeing all those awesome Iowan people, and there were a lot of people from other states too.
Oh,
But
for sure. Yeah.
it's a real family community.
Yes, I agree. And I also felt that with Ride the Rockies. So let's get into Ride the Rockies. All right.
Sure.
So, like I mentioned, the route changes a little bit every year. I am a huge fan of the route this year, but it's from a different level than you because I'm not from Colorado. But it's just like like what Andrew and I were talking about. Pedaling through Rocky Mountain National Park is going to be crazy cool. So, do you want to just give us
hmm
some high level of the route this year?
It's going to be a varying route, which is really nice because if you've been to Colorado, you know that, depending on where you are, the views are different, which sounds
Mm,
silly, but we're starting in Fort Collins, which is all about kind of the red rocks and the flat irons,
mm-hmm.
and which are more towards Boulder, but just red terrain. And then as we go up Big Thompson Canyon, it closes in, but it's an old historic canyon that used to be my absolute favorite drive whenever my mom and I would come out to
Oh,
Colorado in the
really?
summertime. Yeah, we would all the way across Nebraska. We'd just be looking forward to Big Thompson Canyon. It was just so cool with all the little cabins and stuff. And I haven't been up there for years, so
Mm.
I'm really excited about that. And then, of course, Estes Park is the gateway to the Rocky Mountain National Park,
Oh,
and that yeah, and that climb and that day is just going to be amazing, just from all the views you'll see, and the hundreds of miles you'll be able to see, weather permitting, which we know it's going to be great weather because I've ordered it for that
oh,
week.
good. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Um, but yeah, we're going to have some great canyon climbs. We're going to go over two really big passes. We're going to have visit a bunch of really iconic, fantastic Colorado towns, and we're just going to make it a really fun time for all of our participants this year.
And, I spoke of the whole Rocky Mountain National Park segment. That's a pretty unique, or like that took some effort to get that to happen, right?
Yeah, it definitely did. Anytime you go into federal lands, the permitting process is pretty extensive.
Mhm.
The conditions that they have for us to do that ride that day are pretty extensive. And, we're going to get a really early start that day, so we'll be out ahead of the traffic. It is on a Tuesday, which will help. But it'll be a real treat just because, we have some rules we have to follow, like you're going to have to ride single file that day.
Mhm.
But you'll still have great places to stop with good overlooks and, a really good view of the canyon, a much better view than if you're in a car doing 35 miles an hour, which I think is the posted speed limit throughout the park. So,
And it's just
um,
such a unique opportunity to do it on a bicycle,
hmm
right?
yes, it is. Yeah, as a group. Yeah,
Right.
definitely. I mean, you can ride your bike through there anytime, but to go as a group and to have support on the way up the climb and
Yeah.
then on the way down and stuff is definitely a really unique thing.
Oh, wow. I'm excited for it. And this route, when I look through the history, because Ride the Rockies has been around for a long time, it seems
Hmm
shorter than most years. Was that intentional?
Yes, I think this year was kind of a reset. With Ventures Endurance taking over the ride last year, they're trying to get a feel for the culture of Colorado, is my feeling. And
Oh, yeah.
so having shorter routes this year will give us a chance to reach out to some of those people who've always kind of thought, wow, ride the Rockies, it'd be great, but 6 days on a bike in the mountains, I don't know if I can do that.
Right.
Well, you can do that this year. There's no problem there at all. And then we're going into some really classic towns in Colorado, and that means that you're going to have the time to see the towns, meet the people, dig into the culture. I mean, there's going to be activities everywhere, and so it's just really going to be a fun year.
And every Ride the Rockies, it's always about more than just the biking part of it. But I think based on what you just said, this is the year that, the ride is really going to showcase Colorado and all the things that Colorado offers besides just being in the saddle of a bicycle.
Yeah, that's very true. Definitely. Yeah. I'm working with all the towns to bring in unique experiences,
Oh, yeah.
and we're really early in the planning period on that. So, I don't have a lot of details yet, but we're going to make sure there's bands. We're going to try and do, maybe a movie night. Grand Lake. You'll be able to take a paddle boat out on Grand Lake and paddle
Oh,
around
cool.
after your ride. Winter Park is welcoming you, and if Mother Nature permits, we'll have the resort open, so there'll be activities up at the resort that people can do. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's the towns are really going to open their doors wide and welcome the riders and make sure that they have lots to do that'll give them a taste of what's out here, so people will want to come back.
I think it's important to note, though, that there will be elevation and, something back to the Ride the Rockies route announcement. I was the one kind of promoting the different communities and the mileage each day. And I would be like, and today we're going to do this many 1,000 feet of climb. And I was like, kind of blown away. And then it was funny after that, when people were just kind of, roaming around talking, I kind of got made fun of, like, it's obvious you are not from Colorado because that's not very steep. I'm like, well, for a first time rider, I think it will still be an aggressive ride.
Yeah, no, it will be, and I do remember that. That was pretty
Yeah.
funny, but yeah, there's big elevation every day, but the thing, years ago I rode my bike on part of the transcontinental trails. They used to have those books that you could buy, and they were maps of how cyclists went across the United States. And we rode across Missouri, and we ran into tons of people who rode Missouri all the time, and they said, "This is killing me." The Rockies were easier than riding in Missouri because even though you've got long climbs, they're very gradual. So they may have a good pitch here and there, but you just keep climbing and then you have great descents. But
Yeah.
when you're in places like Iowa and Missouri, those hills up and down, they will rip the legs off of you. So
Right.
I think you'll find that Colorado is harder and easier all at the same time.
Yeah, you get it over with in one, you suffer one big mountain climb or one big pass climb and then smooth sailing into the next town.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And I do encourage people to come out a few days early just to acclimate themselves. Come out, bring your bikes, ride around Fort Collins, and then maybe drive up into the mountains a little bit, get some higher altitude, go for a
Mm-hmm.
nice walk, and then come back down. And if you spend a couple days acclimating, you'll find that, by the time we head over the Trail Ridge Road in the Rocky Mountain National Park, you'll be feeling pretty good about the altitude.
Mm-hmm. Well, as ride director, what sort of role do you play? I mean, obviously you do all of the planning, but do you want to give us some details?
Sure. Scarily, I'm the face of Ride the Rockies. So, I'm
Scarily.
scarily, yeah. That's a nice thing about a podcast. I have a face for radio. Um, so, I'll be working with all the towns is pretty much my role, and the agencies along the way, but mostly with the towns to develop the entertainment and the food and just what all's happening. And then of course, I'll be driving the routes several times and praying that we get Trail Mountain Road open on Memorial Day weekend so I can drive it at least a couple of times before the event. But
Oh, I never even
just drive,
thought of that. That
yeah.
it's a lot of those passes are probably like snowed in right now.
Yeah, that
Oh,
definitely,
wow.
that's one of them. They close down, usually sometime mid-October, and then their goal every year is to get it open by Memorial Day weekend. So we're gonna hope that they're get their goal this year.
Yeah.
And generally, I'm at another bike event in Gunnison, Colorado during that weekend, and Gunnison is much further south, but it's always been, in the 80s that weekend. So I think we'll be in good shape.
Oh,
So
nice. Okay.
yeah.
Well,
Um, my goal is the whole rider experience. So I want to make sure that the riders have a great experience, that the staff and crew have a great experience, that all our volunteers are having the time of their lives, and that it's safe. That
sure.
the routes are well marked. If there's any hazards in the road, to the best of our ability, we make sure we point those out. And lots of communication. I plan on communicating with the
Yeah.
riders.
Yeah. Well, I have seen it firsthand, and you probably have as well, but describe like a typical day for the riders. I mean, everyone listening knows what Ragbri is about. You get up, a lot of people leave town, pack up, 6 or 7 a.m., and they ride all day long. Like they might not get into town till 3 or 4. But I feel like Ride the Rockies is a little bit different because of the route. I mean, you're going over big passes, lots of climbing. So do you want to describe a typical day for a Ride the Rocky rider?
Well, you kind of stole my
Oh,
opening line there.
well, you can say it again. Everyone can hear it a second time.
um, well, yeah, a typical day, you're still going to get up early. You need to drop your luggage, depending on whether you're staying at a hotel or whether you're camping. You need to drop your luggage at the luggage truck or at the front desk, and then you basically ride your bike. We'll have between 2 and 5 rest stops along the route that'll give you a chance to get some water and a little bit of nutrition to keep going. And, because the rides are a little shorter, there's no reason to hurry.
Right.
I know that at Ragbri sometimes there is a concern that that you might not get into town till late if you don't keep moving, but you'll be able to not panic and take your time, especially on some of those climbs.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to just enjoy yourself.
So
Let's see.
obviously, they take their time, enjoy all the views and all that good stuff. And this specific route, the riders will be camping in the same spot at least a couple of days, right?
Yeah, that's really true. So we're starting in Fort Collins, and depending on whether you come in on Friday or Saturday, you might spend a couple days in Fort Collins. And then Sunday, we'll roll out from Fort Collins up to Estes Park, and we'll spend 2 days in Estes Park, which will be really nice.
Yeah. So then you can leave your camp or your hotel, set up the same.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And then as we go over to Grand Lake, some people will be staying 2 nights in either Fraser or Granby, which isn't that far from Grand Lake. And a few people, I think, are actually going to go to Winter Park
Hmm.
and stay. So they'll be able to keep in those locations for 2 nights as well, because there's not a huge amount of distance between them.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll make sure that we have shuttles arranged and stuff so that they can get back to the venue at Grand Lake, and then of course they'll be in Winter Park the next day. So
Yeah.
that'll be really nice because I do enjoy not having to pack up my tent every day.
Right.
But
Which brings me to the next question. RAGBRAI is primarily a camping event, and of course, a lot of people choose to, bring their RVs or, do something different. But what's the style of most Ride the Rockies riders? Are they camping or hoteling?
they're pretty much hoteling.
Oh, nice.
We have about 20% that camp, but most of the people hit hotels every night. So, I think that's really nice because I know when I did Ragbri, my hiney was sore and the ground was hard and, you
Yes.
know,
And
it was still a blast.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but there were a couple days there when a soft bed would have been a nice thing to have. So yeah, you can definitely, pick to work with Summit Cycling Experience and have an elevated camping experience, or you can bring your own tent and have us take it from town to town and you set it up, or you can pick one of the many, many hotel offerings that we've got out there on the Ride the Rockies website.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. So if I am registered for Ride the Rockies, but I'm not a good camper, I can go to your website and find out different hotel options or what company did you mention?
Summit Cycling Solutions.
Summit Cycling Solutions. So all of that's
Yeah.
available for me to look at on the website, right?
Yes, definitely.
Oh,
Yeah.
easy. Okay, good. Well, any major challenges that you think riders will face this year?
Yeah, I think they'll be spending so much time admiring the Colorado beauty, they'll forget to ride their bike. But,
I can tell you the
um,
day that I rode on the route, I definitely stopped a lot to take photographs. It was just so beautiful.
yeah, no, that's going to be a challenge for sure. And then obviously, as we've talked about, the climbs up Trail Ridge, and we haven't mentioned Berthoud Pass, but that's the day out of Winter Park. That's definitely going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said earlier, the grades are steady. They're just really long. And then I think the other challenge everybody's going to have is drinking all the Colorado craft beer.
Oh,
Because we have breweries everywhere in this state. So, bar hopping shouldn't be a problem anywhere you go.
excellent. And not to mention, New Belgium Brewery is your start and end location, right? Fort Collins.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. The New Belgians being a great partner and they have great beer. So,
Yeah.
it's good. I'm looking forward to that part. It's going to be fun.
Wow, I'm excited. Well, before we go, will you maybe give the listeners, you're now Ride the Rockies ride director, but I know that you've had tons of other experiences with cycling events. Do you want to share a few?
Sure. Yeah. I've done everything from just being a member of the crew and putting the signage out on the road so that everybody knows where they're going, all the way up to, having someone call and say, hey, we want to do a Grand Fondo in Pasadena. Can you put it together? So, I've got experience with all the races that used to happen in the United States, the, Amgen Tour of California and Tour of Missouri, the U.S. Pro Cycling Challenge in Colorado. Those were all great experiences. And then I worked for the Giro d'Italia for
Mm.
RHS Media, and I put on Grand Fondos for them in Beverly Hills, Pasadena, Miami, Philadelphia. So some really cool cities to work in, challenging cities, but really, really fun. And then I had the honor of putting together the Ride for Remembrance, which was commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we started at the Armenian consulate in LA and rode all the way to the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C.
Wow, that's across country.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was really fun.
I mean, those are all pretty intense events. I mean, as far as volume of riders and the planning and all of that stuff that goes into it.
Yeah, that one was very intense because they gave me like 4 months to put it together, and and we had people flying in and out from all different locations because only three riders rode every leg of it, and so I
Ah,
think it was three, and so I had to figure out how to get them safely across. a whole lot of states.
Right.
And the biggest challenge actually was when we got to the east, and I think it was the Ohio River. There's only a few bridges that are bike friendly to get across the Ohio, so we had to go clear up to Wheeling, West Virginia, and then drop back down to DC. So
Oh,
it was interesting.
Yeah. So
And I misspoke. It was called A Race for Recognition.
A Race for
LA
Recognition.
LA to DC, A Race for Recognition.
Okay. All right. And planning all of these events, there's so many parts to even a one-day ride. So, like, what would you say you focus on the most? I mean, or are there many mosts?
Well, what I focus on the most is safety, 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 because that's my biggest concern. I want everybody to get on their bike, have a great day, and arrive at their destination happy, healthy, and hungry. But after that, of course, I want it to be a fun, interesting, engaging ride.
Yeah.
I want the course to have something for everybody, so that you're not just on your bike staring at trees all day long, or or out across the plains. And even then, as long as you throw a cow out there occasionally, I'm a happy person. But
That's funny because I rode my bike across the United States last year, and I laughed every time I had to delete a photo of a cow, like in my camera or in my phone. I was like, why am I taking pictures of cows this whole time? I'm from Iowa. I don't need 70 pictures of cows. So you're right.
Yeah. Yep. No. Yeah. You need something different. It's like the other day I was driving through Colorado, and in the South Park area, which is kind of southwest of me, and there was this absolutely gorgeous white buffalo standing on this knoll. And it's like, it's just those are the kind of things we look for. Just something unexpected to suddenly pop out and catch your attention. So, that's my next purpose, or my next focus when I'm trying to plan a ride. And then, of course, I want it to end up in a destination that's going to be interesting, obviously. I think people are really going to enjoy our stay at McGregor Ranch at Estes Park. And hopefully we can get some entertainment put together out there, as well as in the town. And that's just going to carry through that for the whole rest of the trip, just making sure that you have a great ride and then a great experience when you're done that day.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, with a little bit less mileage each day, the riders will really get the opportunity to, slow down, see all that, you've set up as far as a route goes, all that Colorado offers. And then, like you said, what these communities are going to be setting up for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're, every community I've talked to is extremely excited about having Ride the Rockies. So,
yeah.
And that makes all the difference in the world, the community engagement. We really want to make it a partnership.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, tell the listeners how they can get registered, or at least find out more information about Ride the Rockies.
www.ridetherockies.com. And there's a ton of information on the website for you, and you can register there and to get all your questions answered. And if you have other questions that we haven't answered in the FAQs, just shoot off an email to info@ridetherockies.com, and one of us on the team will get back to you.
Excellent. Well, Sabra, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I'm really excited to, as we progress, we should have you on again, and you can talk about, the entertainment you have set up and the routes and all that good stuff.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to do that.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Murph.
Well, listeners, that is it for this week. We both want to thank you for tuning in to listen to the Just Go Bike podcast.
And if you'd like to contact us with a comment about the podcast, or maybe you have a topic in mind, you can reach us at justgobikepodcast@gmail.com, or you can also follow us on social media at Just Go Bike on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, especially if you're a fan. And if you have any extra time, pop on over to the Murphology podcast for more bike adventure interviews.
All right, that's a wrap. We'll be back next week. Until then, Just go bike!